Thanks again for joining us. AI is a super hot topic. I will get into what we know, what we're seeing as technologists that work with legal professionals, and what we kind of think, is good today and what will be good tomorrow for AI. ChatGPT obviously is the brand name of what we know, but this does cover all generative AI tools, which is pretty much everything you're seeing and everything in the news today. So this will be a 30-minute webinar. We'll try to get through the content in about 20 minutes and leave some time for questions at the end. Sometimes we do get a busy Q&A. I am absolutely happy to stay a little bit longer if we want to get through it. Sometimes we get no questions, so we'll see. Again, this quick reminder, this is LSO accredited for professionalism hours, so make sure you get those recorded if you weren't already aware. I just want to introduce myself and Nolan. Nolan is the CEO of Inderly. We're a managed service provider, technology support, and hosting company that works pretty much exclusively with law firms. My name is Colin Pierce. I'm the founder and current CFO of Inderly, and they seem to have swapped my photo out. I promise I'm not that vain. That's probably the only photo on earth of me taking a selfie of myself. So I'll have to have a conversation with somebody about how that got in there. So I'm going to jump right into it here. We don't have a ton of time. So AI in legal practice, I mean, it's impossible to not be getting bombarded with AI news. It's going to take our jobs. It's going to take over the world. It's going to change everything. There's a lot of misinformation out there. There's a lot of bloated information, but there is something very cool here. This technology is real. It is really useful in a sense with a bunch of catches. And I kind of want to drill into that a little bit and how we've seen it be used by lawyers and law firms. So it is a big deal. This isn't something that's going to pass. It may not be called AI forever, but some of these what's called LLMs or large language models that have come out of this current trend will absolutely be tools that I think will stick around and be used for a long time. At the same time, it does come with legal and ethical risks. I'll get into those in a little bit. The biggest one is that it's a bit of a black box. So we don't know what we don't know when these AIs are doing their thing. And we want to give you a few tips to move forward, with your eyes a little bit more open and know how to use it responsibly within your firm. So where are we seeing AI be used? Drafting is probably the number one thing. You can draft an opinion. You just get, basic treatment. It's obviously not something where you could draft a document and submit it to the court or send a contract or anything like that. I think by now we've all heard the story of the two lawyers down in the States about 6 months or a year ago that had submitted some documents to the court citing cases that were completely made up. They had never happened, and ChatGPT had hallucinated this, and it was very convincing, but none of it was real. But from the perspective of, and this is how I personally use AI, sometimes it's easier to get the wrong answer and correct it, or just get sort of the bones of something and go from there than it is to start from scratch. I'll get into anything LLM and some of these specialized models a little bit more, but it's definitely, it's a procrastination remover. And it's a good way to, you can tell it to speak in a certain voice, do certain things. And again, you can get the bones of something useful from it if you're willing to take the time to correct it, make sure the information's correct, it's going out in, the formatted voice that you want to have it in. So absolutely great for drafting. And you can use tools, these same ones that you use for things like disclosure search, or even just search of, say, internal knowledge bases. There's more than just logging into ChatGPT and using the information that it has. There are local models. One that comes to mind that I've actually seen in action is called Anything LLM, although there are specialized AI tools like Disco and stuff like that where you can upload your data. But I do want to talk about Anything LLM for a second, because I actually think it's kind of unknown and super useful. So what it is, it's an AI tool that you can actually run on your own computer, and you can give it your own documents. So say you have a ton of disclosure, you can point this program at all of those documents and then ask it questions. and it will cite within the documents that you've given it, it will cite where it got the answers from. So the best example, and it's not a legal example, but the best example I've seen in practice just a few weeks ago was a friend of mine has a basically a cosmetics company. They sell and offer a ton of different treatments and products and things like that. And they set this all up. They took all of their internal documentation, drug papers, everything like that, put it into anything LLM, and they asked it a question about removing wrinkles in this one part of the body or some very specific thing, and it came out with an answer, how to deliver the treatment, and then it cited, here's the papers that I got from and all that kind of stuff. It was a very good answer. In that case, it was 100% right. He said most of the time it's 95% right. You still have to have an expert come in and make sure that it's not getting it wrong. But it was tremendously useful, and it's totally confidential. So I think there's a bright future for AI tools in search and in sort of information gathering. If anybody here, grew up watching Star Trek: The Next Generation, people having conversations with the computer, that's kind of what it is. You can, in natural language, ask it questions rather than having to learn how to format a search. Those ones with private sort of repositories are will grow in popularity, I think, and we'll see more tools like that come out in the future. And that brings me to the last point on here. Again, it's great for research. Keyword searches are fine, but AI will search on sentiment and search in a bit of a deeper way. So when you're looking back on 100+ years of precedents, AI is a super powerful tool to do that search. So we're seeing that be added in by companies like Westlaw, Lexis, and again, I think you'll see especially larger firms, if they haven't already, use products like anything LLM on their own data sets in order to be able to go back and do research that otherwise in things that might never have been checked. So what are the risks? Again, the biggest thing is AI is a black box. So every other piece of software, essentially, until now, it's deterministic in the sense that we know why it does what it does. Now, obviously, really large, complicated things like Microsoft systems and stuff like that, there's thousands of people involved in writing the code. So it's a bit of a black box in the sense that no one person can trace it end to end. But everything, there's a reason behind the why. With AI, we don't necessarily know why it's outputting what it's outputting. You can ask it the same question twice, and because there's randomness built in most popular models, you won't get the same answer twice. So it's not deterministic. So you can't prove beyond the shadow of a doubt that it didn't miss something in disclosure, that it isn't citing a more recent precedent on a case or something like that. You don't know what you don't know. Obviously, people are fallible as well. And I think right now, there's not enough precedent with AI tools to say, hey, this is as good or better than a person, kind of like self-driving cars. At some point in the future, I have no idea how long it's going to take. We will say, look, these things are accurate, 10 times more accurate than a person, in which case I think it will become sort of more acceptable to use them in a more confident way. But for the time being, you don't want to be on the hook for having missed something very important in litigation or something like that, when a person would have obviously seen this. So you can't just outsource your work to it right now. Really, any part of it, you can, again, get the wrong answer and make it correct. But that's the sort of consequence of it not being non-deterministic. Bias and fairness is absolutely massive in AI, especially the LLMs, like where they're trained on the language itself. These things scrape the internet, and they think like people wrote on the internet. So I don't know if anybody watching this spends a lot of time on the internet, but it doesn't necessarily reflect real life. And it certainly doesn't necessarily reflect the discourse of the courts or contract law or anything like that. So there's definitely a bias on that. Anybody that's following the news, XAI recently released an AI that's now making the news because there was some bias. It was told to ignore certain political figures and stuff like that. So again, because we don't know what we don't know what the biases are, but they certainly are not necessarily biased towards being like good lawyers or good legal researchers. Another huge one is AI, depending on the tool you're using, will use your results and your data in future results. And if you upload a document to that, sure, it goes into a pool of trillions of pieces of information. But if you, for example, upload a bit of text that is extremely specific, say there's a specific matter you've litigated that it's really the only time this has ever happened, and that goes into ChatGPT, and a future model is trained with that data, and somebody asks a specific enough question, it is possible for them to get verbatim what you uploaded. So your data is not it's not anonymous when you use these public tools. There are many tools where it is, and it works only on your own data, but you have to be careful about what you're using. It depends on the tool that you're using, but the public ones, if you upload data, you can't trust that it's secure. So there are private repositories like anything LLM and Disco that are. And I'll just jump ahead to this. So the big ones that we want to talk about with data security, I'm just naming names of the most popular tools right now. Westlaw, obviously, you're searching their database, not yours. Disco is a discovery tool that's been around since before AI, but they've added AI capabilities. And just in speaking to various people, it kind of seems to be the real deal. Looks very good. Anything LLM, again, it runs on your computer. So it kind of like it learned to speak from public data, but when it's answering, it is not sending anything back to the mothership. So you can safely run that yourself. Microsoft Copilot, which is, it's like Clippy. It's in all our faces. People are using it all the time. Microsoft Copilot does not use your data or your documents to train its models. However, it does, depending on the permissions within your organization, potentially expose documents that you thought were confidential to people within your organization. It can potentially expose information with those documents to your broader organization. If that makes sense. So say there's a really sensitive matter that only one partner has access to, or one division has access to because of an ethical firewall. If your data protection rules are not set up properly within your Office 365 environment, there is a world in which somebody who otherwise did not have permission to that document can gain information from that document. This is pretty esoteric, but you are going to see this come up where stuff got leaked between departments, especially in big law. This will eventually be a problem. So just, if you've got a large organization, you've got serious ethical firewalls, and you're using Copilot extensively, talk to your IT folks and just make sure things are set up there. And I'm just going to go back. So what do we do about this? Don't not use AI tools. I spent 3 hours having a conversation with Anthropic Claude on how to write code for a product I'd never used before. It was fantastic. I got something done that would have taken me weeks. I got it done in 5 hours. Again, use it as a starting point. Use it to get the wrong answers. It is a massive tool to leverage your productivity or just get yourself unstuck. So don't shy away from it, but you have to use it responsibly, and don't trust it, basically. So always review your AI generated content. Know that at the current time, it has a huge predisposition towards hallucinating. At this point, no AI model will ever say, I don't know, or here's what I don't know. They will always essentially try to give an answer. At the core, these things are just giant autocompletes. If you ever use autocomplete on your phone, it's just a really, really powerful version of that. So it's biased to kind of talk. It's not to say that in the future, this won't get coded in, this ability won't exist, but as of today, it's going to give you something, and it's up to you to determine if that's right. Again, make sure that you're really careful about the tools you're using. Don't upload client information to ChatGPT. It's just, don't do that. Again, watch it within your organization, and keep an eye out for local models. And work together as a company. So especially within law, where you have just a huge variety of tech competencies, it's good to get ahead of it and talk as a firm, find out who's using tools, these AI tools currently, how are they using them? Are we okay with how they're using them? Are you using ones that are safe? And make sure you've got a policy moving forward about how you're going to use it. And consider disclosing, at least within your firm. This was drafted by ChatGPT, flag it. There's nothing wrong with using it, but if people are aware that it was, generated by an AI, they will look at it in a different way, a more critical lens, especially towards factual accuracy. So it's good to do that and not just say, "Hey, I wrote this." I think we're all gonna kind of know what AI's voice sounds like. So a lot of the time when I read documents, I'm like, "Yeah, this was totally started by ChatGPT," because it kind of talks in a certain way. So you can often tell, but again, factual accuracy is really important. Um, yeah, so our key takeaways again, it's not going to replace lawyers. It's not going to replace legal assistants. It is going to, like every other tool, allow us to do more in the same amount of time, and kind of probably help get rid of a lot of the tedious parts of the work. Just kind of like how most technologies have. Um, Research will be easier. You won't have to read quite as much. You can get started on things faster, and all that kind of stuff. This is a super fast moving industry. In a year, this webinar will be different. We will have more specifics, more specific tools towards the legal industry. We will see how the courts have reacted to it, how regulators are reacting to it. It's very much the Wild West right now. And so stay on top of it, because stuff changes all the time. And again, new information is going to come in. I know that like even the Canadian courts have now like acknowledged AI and have somewhat guidelines on how the courts should use it and stuff like that. But this is going to get drilled in a lot. Again, I definitely recommend tackling this as a firm. If only just because you can have certain people in the firm help others in the firm use these tools. And again, check everything for accuracy. And then the last thing, I don't have a slide on here, but there was a stat that I saw yesterday that I think kind of sums up the current state of AI tools. It's folks that work in like tech, in the sense of people that work at Facebook, Google, Shopify coders, like that kind of job, account for 1.3 or 1.7% of the working population, but they make up 27% of all AI users in terms of the questions that they're asking. So AI has different capabilities for different industries. So what we see right now, again, for coding, like I was using it yesterday, is absolutely incredible. And it's a force multiplier. I did the work of 4 people. Law, not so much. So different industries will embrace this in different times. And it kind of remains to be seen how good and reliable this will truly be for the legal industry. Perhaps it will always just be like a really unreliable assistant that never sleeps, or perhaps it will get better and more accurate and be used in the courts. But again, we do say embrace it, use it, with a huge degree of skepticism, and keep the conversation open within your firm about how it's being used. So much like AI itself, we don't have any solid answers or like firm takeaways, but I hope this has enlightened you a little bit on what our take of these tools are. I'm actually going to go back to the slide here in case anybody was interested in the tools themselves. These are, again, and this is just from conversations. If anybody is using any other legal specific AI tools, we'd be super interested in hearing what you're using. Feel free to pop that in the chat. And if unless it's a secret sauce and you don't want to disclose to anybody, but we're always curious as to what's being used and how. So I'll leave this up. This is probably the most interesting slide, anyways. So I will open this up to questions now, if anybody has any comments, concerns, and again, we'd love to hear what you're using in AI. Nolan, how have you used AI this week?
I use it just to see what it can do in terms of script writing and helping me solve problems with the help desk. Sometimes there's issues that come up where I'm just like, I feel like it's the solve is X, but it could be Y. I'll ask GPT what do you think? And they'll sort of compile like all of the, like, instead of me like searching Google for something and going through pages and pages of Reddit, other industry folks talking about it, it'll just consolidate right up top and be like, here are the top the main responses. And it's a really good jumping off point where, like, sometimes you can't see the forest through the trees.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really good for just like a second set of eyes. And yeah, like, it's not perfect. It's not close to it. But again, it does consolidate all of this data. And since I'm a professional, I know which paths to follow.
And I think that's the most important thing is that, um, again, it's a great way to get the wrong answer, and you still have to be an expert to know whether it's the right answer or not. And and I think that's the point that I say a lot in conversation, especially with legal professionals, is, I hear headlines all the time. Lawyers are never going to have jobs again. It's going to go out of business. It's absolutely not going to happen. Because you don't know what you don't know unless you practice law, in which case, okay, you go, yeah, this is right or this is wrong, and I need to fix the 5% that's wrong. So
Mhm.